100% behind Q. He's working for the president, he's working for our country.
Alien life, like pedophiles, and it just seeks to tie all of that together.
Welcome, listeners, to the 19th chapter of the QAnon Anonymous podcast, the JFK Jr. and Vincent friggin' Fusca episode. We are your hosts, Jake Rockatansky,
Travis View, Toots, and Julian Field. This week we have a very special episode for you in more ways than one. First, we will be tackling the QAnon community belief that a man called, is it Fusca or Fusca?
I think it's Fusca.
I think it's Fusca, so we'll continue to call it, I like that you called it Fusca, though. It's adorable.
Fusca.
Vincent Fusca is actually JFK Jr., who didn't really die in a plane crash, and is now posting to 8chan as the mysterious Q. Then we'll touch on a second, somewhat related theory that the recently deceased George H.W. Bush, the CIA, and other members of the deep state conspired to murder JFK. If those topics aren't spicy enough for you, we have nabbed Matt Christman, host of the Chapo Trap House podcast, who will help us navigate these pressing issues by yelling so loud he'll clip the waveform. But before all that, some updates. First up, Harry D is actually just a person called Harry with a second name that starts with the letter D, and not an incredible prankster who got us to say Harry D on the air. The result is that Harry D will be said on the air every week until the end of time. If you have any questions about why British people do this kind of thing, please don't write in. Secondly, we'd just like to call out Apollo the Cosmonaut in our Discord community, although he was on Twitter hanging out with us before that, for making the QAnon Anonymous magazine covers. So far, there are 2.
collect them all.
Yeah. Collect them all, honestly. They're based on...
Great Awakening
right.
magazine cover.
That are just legends of design.
Which is kind of like the old Boy Scout magazine that used to get, like Boy's Life, but it's a little bit different.
That sounds so wrong now. Boy's Life?
I know. Times changed, Julian. No more Boys Life magazines for you.
So thank you so much, Apollo, and go check those magazine covers out on Twitter or join us on Discord to check those out. The third piece of community news that is amazing is that our friend Repton has created a Q bot. This bot was trained on all previous Q drops and can generate a Q drop on command. So if you come in to into our Discord, there's a channel called the Q Ball Pit, and you can get in there with Q and just have a good convo with him, her, they. It's magnificent.
Yeah, instant Q drops. It's just like the real thing. It's incredible.
I mean, I've joked in the past on this podcast that Q is essentially a word salad generator, and now he can be.
And we will be finding a way to sort of filter that out into Twitter so that we can attract more QAnon fruit flies.
We are working on a deep state plot to have bakers try to bake the crumbs that our bot is assembling randomly.
Which is probably not going to be all that different from the quote-unquote real ones.
No. The drops are so legit. I'm curious what they're trying to say. Yeah. And I think, if I'm not wrong, our names have been programmed in there randomly too, so that at times this bot will mention Julian, Jake, and Travis. That's amazing.
I love it.
So thank you so much for that, Repton, and obviously just cheers to the community in general. You guys have been really fantastic.
Yeah, it's like it's all our favorite people in one place. QAnon news.
First up, we have disappointing D5. The
hey, we're not going to laugh as hard the second time.
Every single time I talk about D5. Damn it. All right. So the QAnon community was expecting something to happen on December the 5th, possibly like mass arrests, maybe during the funeral of George H.W. Bush, which happened to be the same day or immediately afterwards. So the Q crew got really excited when they saw that a bus that was unloading people for the funeral had a paper that said had the letter D and the number 5 on it, and but that was basically the height of the excitement. that was it, and so it passed and nothing. And so it's been rescheduled again. They're thinking maybe something big will happen on December the 13th, which is the day the Hubert testimony about the Clinton Foundation has been rescheduled, or possibly January 1st.
Can we talk about December 13th? That's my birthday. I'm very excited.
Is it really?
That potentially Q could be sending all these deep state criminals to jail on
Well,
on
that'd
my
be
birthday.
awesome.
Well, yeah, Huber will reveal that all the human trafficking that the Clinton Foundation has been doing. So,
But I thought that something did happen during the funeral and that like notes were passed.
Oh yeah, there was the
There was a
envelopes.
whole,
Yeah.
there
And
was a whole
I-
theory that Jeb Bush was passed a note that just said "You're next," and that he started crying at his father's funeral because of that. That's why.
I of course poured over the video clips looking for anything, and it's pretty funny actually because Hillary sits down and she opens her her brochure, and it is
pretty sure
just
it's
like
not a brochure.
whatever it is.
It's a fucking funeral.
It's a funeral brochure. Yeah, that's what you hand out flyers. At a
Hillary,
funeral.
would you like to? It's definitely not flyers either.
Well, they
I
are.
like the idea that Hillary's looking at furniture.
Okay, would you call
during the
it a
HW
program?
Yeah, I mean
A funeral program.
No, that'll work.
Okay, so she opens her funeral program, and a little white envelope like slides out and drops into her lap. Like they couldn't have choreographed it better if this was like a fucking Mission Impossible movie. Like it falls into her lap, and she kind of looks at it quizzically, and then like opens it and reads it, and then makes a kind of, I don't know. I think her facial expression is probably up for interpretation, but she doesn't seem happy about it, and then she folds it back in.
You know why? Because it's probably an advertisement. Like that's the world we live in now. You open funeral programs and advertisement falls out.
It's like 41st's casket. Please head on down to Bob's Funeral Supply.
It's literally just a two-for McDonald's coupon.
Yeah, there was some speculation that that was subpoenas that they were being served.
Of course, yes.
But who has that kind of foresight to plant? I mean, it just seems like a lot of work to go through just to be like, we're coming for you.
yeah. And why
I think you
do
know
it
who has that.
in front of cameras at a globally televised funeral? This seems like not the appropriate venue.
But I wonder what the notes were.
Yeah. And we can all agree that Trump is capable of something this complex.
So, but not everyone really thought that December 5th was a flop. So let's get the alternative perspective from Jake here.
Well, the funniest thing is, I go on Twitter, which is my only source of information nowadays, and I see so many people that are like, haha, bust, like what did you guys think was gonna happen? And here's my thing, I take issue with everyone immediately writing this off as a bust. Yes, I'm sure that the most helpless QAnons were certain that the FBI would storm the funeral of George H.W. Bush like the climax of some like Martin Scorsese film, some shit like that. But to me, like the big reveal was always going to be Huber reporting his findings on his investigation and the Clinton Foundation. So like obviously you can't testify in the midst of a funeral for like a great war hero president like George H.W. Bush.
I would just like to call out anyone who is capable of looking our beautiful boy in the eyes and making fun of him for thinking something was going to happen that day. Stop picking on our big boy.
No. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that I thought
feelings are hurt.
something was going to happen that day. I'm just saying that the
Their feelings
reason.
are hurt and people are picking on you.
Well,
I can come to school and talk to them if you want.
well, you're saying that this wasn't a representative belief.
The thing is everybody thought D5 was going to be the big thing because that was the day that Huber was going to testify. It was,
Okay.
and then the testimony got pushed, obviously because of the funeral. So it's like, oh, what a bust. But it's like my thing is like, let's wait and actually see this Huber testimony, and like before we start, ragging on these people.
So true, man. These people are really tired of you ragging on them. They called the suicide hotline twice this week, and they would like you to stop.
Jake, Travis, and Julian do not condone any unhinged theory regarding faceless internet spy and his fascistic fantasies. Jake is only moderately red-pilled and intends to use his platform for good, but sometimes he just can't fucking help himself. The previous monologue is meant to be taken with 70% sarcasm and 30% dementia. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's talk a little bit about JFK Jr. and Vincent Fusca and the QAnon community.
Wait, now you're switching to fuchsia.
Fusca sounds like a shitty drink.
Is that right?
Well,
Like a
have you
shitty,
seen,
like purple drink.
have you seen a photo of the guy's face? He's not very. He seems like
A fresh glass of Fusca.
he looks like someone used like mascara to draw on like a Halloween face.
Yeah,
Like,
he
he looks like someone drew on his beard.
Yeah, he kind of looks like one of the Jack Sparrow impersonators on like Hollywood Boulevard, like just kind of like a
Totally.
fake pirate.
The idea that this guy who's just a kind of like Trump supporter, just getting consistently harassed and just like having a huge fan base, but it's all based on them thinking that you're a dead guy. it just must be an interesting experience for that guy. I mean,
He should start a Patreon or something.
yes,
At least
dude,
like
he'd
make
be
a little
so-
bit of cash.
So rich if he knew that QAnon is a great grift.
Yeah, and just like leaned it. Like if people thought that I was the real, the long dead JFK Jr. and that I was
Yeah.
like coming to like save them from their, from their kind of, dwindling wages.
Vincent, fuck,
I'd play the shit out of it.
Vincent fucks a lot. Get in touch. We'll help you set up a good grift. Okay.
Hell yeah.
So let's go a little bit about like what some people in the QAnon community believe. And let me be clear, this is not something
Not
that
everybody.
Q has pushed.
Oh.
And it's not universal in the QAnon community.
Has Q never talked about Fusca?
Not directly. In fact, we'll learn today that that Q tried to push back against this theory and failed.
Runaway train.
Yeah, exactly. It has no control over this. So basically, here's what some QAnon people believe. The Mockingbird media would have you think that JFK Jr. died in a tragic plane crash in the Atlantic Ocean a few miles from Martha's Vineyard in 1999, but somehow he did not. This is all fake. This is all a ruse. He survived, and JFK Jr. actually lived and assumed a secret identity. Most typically, people think that Vincent Fusca, a Pennsylvania Trump fan, is the real JFK Jr. Less commonly, they say that JFK Jr. is a bald Secret Service agent who has been photographed next to President Trump a few times.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So some QAnon people believe that JFK Jr. has returned from his fake death to team up with Donald Trump to take down the deep state together.
Ultimate like superhero tag team.
Right.
Yeah, that's so
It's
cool.
bipartisan too.
Yeah,
So.
very much so.
I have to say though, like when I see the faces of the people put next to each other, like it never really checks out.
Yeah.
Like the facial,
weird.
They don't even have like the similar facial features.
Yeah, it's not like Podesta and Chester Bennington when you put those two guys together.
Yeah, or whatever you
We'll
tried
do-
to tell us on that Nazi episode.
Yeah, we'll do an episode. We'll do a whole episode devoted to Chester Bennington being John Podesta's son.
Disclaimer: we will not.
So they really, really like JFK Jr., the QAnon community. And in fact, you often see this fake quote floating around. And you see QAnon people falsely, I'll be clear, saying that JFK Jr. said this.
If my dear friend Donald Trump ever decided to sacrifice his fabulous billionaire lifestyle to become president, he would be an unstoppable force for ultimate justice that Democrats and Republicans alike would celebrate.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
there's
they really, really like that.
It didn't happen though,
No,
right?
no, This has never been said. They say it's like sometimes even like, from George Magazine, 1999. Never happened.
Yes, that's right. They think it's okay. So George Magazine was the kind of fancy lad JFK Jr. magazine where he was like, I wear nice clothes, like
Yes.
a bit like today's GQ, but like more present.
It was
more Kennedy and wealth.
Yeah, it was like lifestyle politics magazine.
Yeah.
It was like sexy politics.
Oh yeah.
Why don't we have any more of those? That could be nice in these times.
Yeah, maybe they could, dude. If George Magazine comes back, it's gonna come back as a QAnon pamphlet.
So the evidence that QAnon people present that Vincent Fusca is the living JFK Jr. is always photographic. They just take a picture of JFK Jr. and compare it to a picture of Vincent Fusca and say, boom, they're the same guy.
I mean, it's so bad.
That's it. That's the extent of the evidence they present.
Is the image on the right an overlay? Because we're looking at some pictures here, listener. There's an image on the right that looks like an overlay of both their faces.
Yeah,
it looks
yes.
terrifying.
Yes. That's like that's sort of like.
This isn't so bad.
I mean, they look more alike than like maybe like me and JFK Jr.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
Not really. Still.
Yeah, no, there's no no.
So and. This is the point I really, really want. It doesn't even matter if he was a dead ringer, if he was like looked 100% like JFK Jr.
Yeah.
because JFK Jr. is dead. He is a dead man.
But I'm sure there's like lookalikes and shit. There are better people than Fusca.
Right.
Why Fusca? Just because it's people who are at home and they're looking at Trump rally photos.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So it has to be someone who walks into the frame in a Trump rally.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So this is, and I want to emphasize that what we actually know about the death of JFK Jr. because I've gotten into long arguments with QAnon believers online, who are people who
This is entirely your fault.
who are people who are insisting that JFK Jr. lives, and this caused me to research the circumstances of his death.
Damn.
So this is the only context in which this information is useful. So I want to explain it to you
Yes.
today.
But
So
it seems like the QAnon believers pull your strings.
they do. Yes. Oh yeah. You were right. You said that I'm like in a BDSM relationship with QAnon. You nailed it. So here are the facts of the matter. On July 16th, a Piper Saratoga aircraft piloted by JFK Jr. and carrying wife Carolyn Bessette and sister-in-law Lauren Bessette crashed into the Atlantic Ocean about 7.5 miles west of Martha's Vineyard. On July 20th, the salvage ship USNS Grasp identified the plane's fuselage on the seafloor. On July 21st, Navy divers recovered the bodies of JFK Jr. and the Bessette sisters. At 7:15 p.m. that night, the remains were transported to Barnstable County Hospital in Bourne, Massachusetts, where autopsies were conducted by Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Richard J. Evans and Dr. James Weiner, which was completed by 11:15 p.m. After the autopsies were completed, the 3 bodies were taken to Duxbury, Massachusetts, where they were cremated in the Mayflower Cemetery crematorium. On the morning of July 22nd, their ashes were scattered at sea from the Navy destroyer USS Briscoe off the coast of Martha's Vineyard.
So
They were like, go back, be with the plane that killed you.
So, Jesus. It's a good point, though. Why would you take the body out to then make him
to then
ashes
put
to
it
then put it
back
back in?
Oh, I guess you
Just
wanted
leave
to
him
be
in
with
the-
your plane
leave him
that
in the
killed
plane.
you.
James Weiner. That is probably Anthony Weiner's dad.
Oh, come on.
And this is a deep state plot.
All
It seems
right.
like it's connected to Huma Abedin. Ask yourself, coincidence?
All right, there's more. So, a copy of JFK Jr.'s death certificate is easily accessible online. It was filed July 27th, 1999.
Yeah.
Death certificate says that the informant who helped certify that JFK Jr. is dead is JFK Jr.'s sister, Caroline. The certifying physician on JFK Jr.'s death is Richard J. Evans, who performed the autopsy.
If only it were as easy to find Obama's birth certificate.
Yeah.
As it is to find JFK Jr.'s
Death
death.
certificate.
Now,
Think about it.
theoretically, couldn't
Coincidence.
all this be faked, though? I mean, if you're dealing
this is
with
the
big,
arg-
deep
right.
state, couldn't one say, well, of course, if the whole government was involved, they could absolutely fake his death certificate.
You don't think that they would fake it in a way that wouldn't require like a Navy diving team to go and recover the bodies and have it be such a public thing? Like there has to be news footage of the bodies being carried out, right?
Yes.
And then he was identified by a family member. You're going to tell me that
Right.
his sister went, looked at the body, and was like, yes, this is my brother's body. I want him to be able to go in hiding so he can years from now help Trump.
Well, I mean, unless the family knew that the deep state was sort of out to get them, and so when here's where I find the most damning evidence. So it says crashed into the Atlantic Ocean about 7.5 miles west of Martha's Vineyard. So you're telling me that the plane crashed, the 2 sisters died, JFK Jr. survives and somehow swims 7 miles in open ocean back to land? I mean, that to me is the...
He comes out of the water like Schwarzenegger in Commando with
Right.
fucking
He's like,
full-
they got me.
He's like,
Right.
he just has a tattoo like anti-deep state task force that he got under the ocean between the time he crashed and swam back to shore. It's totally logical.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Also, the deep state is so good. They killed his father. They killed him. Like
They did everything.
They crashed the plane. Like they know what's going on. Like you can't survive that.
I sometimes wonder what QAnon believers think they're going to be able to do against the deep state. The deep state is pretty good from their accounts
Right.
at murdering people in cold blood
and getting away with it.
hiding them. Just, yeah.
And hiding it
great.
for years and years and years. Yeah, what do they think that their bag of Andy Capp's hot fries and
Yeah. Yes.
They're going to destroy them all with memes.
Yeah.
This is the fantasy.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's dead.
He's dead. He's dead. But how did the idea that he was alive within the QAnon community even get started?
Right,
So,
right.
so like I said, JFK. This theory wasn't pushed by Q, but it caught on anyway. And really, it started innocently enough with Q accusing Hillary Clinton of secretly murdering JFK Jr. in an April 8th Q drop. So in this drop, Q said this.
POTUS and JFK Jr. relationship. Plane crash 1999. HRC Senate 2000. The start. Enjoy the show. Q.
So a common interpretation of this Q drop is that JFK Jr. was interested in running for U.S. Senator in New York, but Hillary wanted the Senate seat. So she somehow killed JFK Jr. in that 1998 plane crash so he couldn't run. And this incensed Donald Trump, who had a close relationship with JFK Jr., which is how the plan to take down Hillary and the evil cabal got started in the first place.
Right. Instead of going to the police and being like, "Hey, man, I think that they had a part in her plane crash. You guys should look into that." He waited 30 years. He waited. He ran in and he put millions and millions into a presidential campaign. He faced 15 of the toughest GOP candidates. He won. Then he won the primary, all for revenge.
I think what's great about these people and the fact that their brains have been mutilated by action movies and just the ambient fascism is that they basically think this guy was in a montage for 30 years doing fucking push-ups and just like getting ready.
I kind of think that too. Well, it's like,
But then he's so fucking old. Like, why would he wait
Right.
until he's decrepit to like finally be like, well, I guess I'll wander out to a Trump convention and just be seen in public for no reason.
he's like, when I've drunk my 15,043rd can of Diet Coke, I will be ready.
He's like, I'm gonna use a Sharpie to draw on a beard, and I'm gonna wear probably the worst fedora ever made, and they'll never know it was once a handsome man who had a fashion magazine.
But there was a more colorful interpretation that dropped that Hillary only attempted to kill JFK Jr. And that he actually escaped death and has been living away from the public eye this entire time. Fuel was added to this theory by a June 23rd post by a mysterious 8chan Q researcher Anon who called themselves R. So this particular post featured a black and white photograph of Donald Trump and JFK Jr. And here's what it says.
In 1909, we lost everything. My father caught on. First to the Bilderbergs, then he caught on the NASA. What?
Yeah,
It's just bad writing.
this
or?
post is a mess.
Okay.
He demanded to know who the Greys were and why they were here.
What, the aliens?
They killed him.
Is this a Q drop?
I strategically staged my own death, allied with the one person in this world whom I knew was honorable enough to trust, and we began to build the plan. Penance is coming. Regardless of what you think, you are not yet awake. You do not know how deep this goes. If you knew, you could not sleep. Many of you could never go on. You need each other. You need every one of you. Learn to play nice with each other or be left behind. If one stumbles, pick them up. If one asks a question,
Wait, is this like a
give them the... This is like a
It's like rules for children.
Yeah, this is like...
at a daycare. If you knew you could not sleep, instead of if you knew you would not be able to sleep.
Yeah. If one asks a question, give them the answer. That is how we grow.
Oh my God.
There's no more room in the plan for arrogance and self-importance.
This is fucking Tony Robbins.
If you turn one away, you've hurt the plan. If you hurt the plan, you'll be left behind. We are watching. We see it all. There are no secrets. You would never believe the files kept on every one of you. For that matter, you'd never believe where they are kept.
It's in your ass.
In a drawer.
It's in a drawer in your ass.
Prepare for the next phase. Prepare each other. You are one. And where we go one, we go all. R.
Yeah, so this is from R, just
Oh, I
a
love
completely separate poster.
Yeah.
but they went
For a
bananas
while,
over
that was a
this.
thing. Yeah,
they
of course.
thought that maybe this person, the R, was actually JFK Jr. or R was saying that actually Q was JFK Jr., the living JFK Jr. I want to let one QAnon believer and frequent contributor to Q Research on 8chan, Kellyanne Hub News, describe her reaction to seeing this post. And this particular video comes from an August 15th YouTube video of hers.
Video one.
Okay, so that was the post. So here we are on 8chan, the main Q research thread, and we see this posted on June 23rd, and we just froze. At least I did.
Who's
I was
we?
like, oh my gosh,
Everyone
this
on
Her and
Q
her
Research.
husband. Her and her
is
Tupperware club.
powerful, and there was just this sense, and there was a lot of us who felt this, and of course, then someone immediately made the side thread, the R thread.
Yes, they were very, very excited. They made a new thread for R just to do some digging into who R is and what R is saying. And they were
But
doing
it's-
some
it-
decodes on the R post.
Well, so then Q came back. He was jealous. He was like, "You used to give me all the attention," and then R had to kind of just peace out, or because he doesn't. R is not a thing anymore, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, R petered out. Is like this is
Yeah.
this is possibly the only sort of R post that there is. So, like around this time, there's some excitement that possibly not only JFK Jr. lives, and possibly this R character confirmed it, is also possibly Vincent Fusca, this Trump super fan who appears at a bunch of rallies.
Yeah.
And really, Vincent Fusca is just a guy, and he actually has been in the press a little bit way before all this QAnon stuff happened. In 2016, before the election, there was an interview with him about his car, the Trumpmobile, he called it, because it was decorated with a big old Trump sticker, and it had a bunch of stars. And I want to show you a video where he's talking about his Trumpmobile and the people's reactions to it.
So these people are all just one step away from being Caesar Sayok, basically.
Well,
it's like they're just they don't know what windows on cars are used for.
Well, yeah,
and eventually there's no light coming in. And they go even fucking crazier.
Right.
It literally is an oven. They make little ovens out of their vans, and then they fucking bake their brain into oblivion.
When Mr. Trump announced that he was going to run for president, I came up with the idea to do something like this. I said, well, the Pope has the Pope-mobile, so Mr. Trump should have the Trumpmobile.
Except the Pope actually rides in it.
I was searching for the right vehicle. It had to be the right look, the right year, the right color. I literally went to an auction with somebody to look for something like that.
I love this guy.
I know.
When I found it, the picture developed in my head.
How did he have enough money to just buy a giant van?
Well, because he's JFK Jr. Clearly.
75% great, and at about 20 to 25%, I'm not gonna give you the derogatory sign. It's been negative. Everything came out of pocket. There's support for Mr. Trump campaign. We're going to see him as our next president.
Wow, dude, that
was
guy,
right. He
that
called
guy
it.
single-handedly crowned our God Emperor Trumpo. He's fucking charming, dude. He looks like everyone's funny, like Italian neighbor that you like to borrow stuff to wash your car from or something.
He's like, come in for a second. I was just about to water the cat.
And you find out years later that he's in debt, like horrifyingly in debt.
Yeah, he just disappears one day, and you're like, what happened to Mr. Fusca who lived next door? They're like, oh, yeah, he hadn't paid his rent for about 4.5 years.
He does. I mean, he has the look of like a kind of like a shut-in weird uncle, like just the kind of long hair. It doesn't look like he's just has a beard. It looks like he just hasn't shaven in a while. Like it looks like he's let himself go in a weird way. And he's got the hat, usually a black cap or some sort of horrifying fedora. And he lets his hair. His hair looks a bit like the main guy in Kingpin, the Amish guy. Just a fucking.
Now, if he is JFK Jr., why would he draw such attention to? If he's been hiding from the deep state for 30 years, I mean,
why would he not be
20 years?
Did he literally go 30 years? He's like, I'm gonna study how to sound a little bit Italian and kind of stupid.
Yeah, right.
Yes, I'm a wasp. I'm a New England wasp, but this time I'm gonna be Italian.
Oh my God, he's like living the part.
He's been living. He basically ate DiGiorno for 30 years and just only goes to Olive Garden, and that's what made him look that way too.
Yeah, and at the end he's like, hey, you mind if I make a couple breadstick containers to go? And they're like, no, sir, that's not the policy here. And he's like, come on.
He's like, have you seen my Trumpmobile parked outside? They're like, ooh, okay, yes, no, give him the breadsticks. Give him the breadsticks.
Give him the breadsticks.
Okay, he seems pretty, inoffensive, other than like clearly being a little off kilter. But
right, so
who am I to judge?
That's right. He seems like a normal dude. Clearly not JFK Jr., but they glommed onto this theory anyway that Vincent Fusca, this Trump superfan who pops up at a bunch of rallies, is really
this to me is on level like. It's a similar assault on reality to the idea that Hillary Clinton had already been arrested and had ankle bracelets and shit. It's just like shit where it's like so absurdly opposed to reality that
it was.
You just have to go all in.
But like, I wonder if the majority of the QAnon community has like seen this video, because I think you can safely say after watching that video that this guy is not JFK Jr.
Yeah,
I don't know,
think they have. I don't think they actually do any research to disconfirm their beliefs. They do research to confirm their beliefs.
But they're going to say, I'm going to tell you right now what they're going to say. They're going to say, okay, why did the media cover this guy? Why did he have the money to buy such a beautiful van? The media covered him early in the campaign. He looked like an everyman. Yes, he wanted to do that early so that he wouldn't be found out later when he was interfering. It's like I can do it for you if you want me to.
Okay.
I quite like that.
Yeah, Jake is like, oh God, I'm hard for the first time in years. And Travis is looking at me like, are you part of my poly relationship with QAnon?
Thing is, it was interesting is that Q actually seemed to disconfirm the validity of R in a July 25th Q drop. This Anon asks, need clarification in order to prevent movement split. Is R real or fake? And then Q responds,
There is only one Q. Q. Look, this is kind of a non-committal answer. He's not saying that R doesn't exist. He's just saying that there's only one Q.
I interpret it to mean that it's like I'm the only sort of valid source of information.
Right. I'm the only intel guy.
R is nothing.
Yeah.
But that did nothing. And it's like this belief spread. There was a like I said that Kellyanne Hub news YouTuber made it like a 60-hour multi-part series about how JFK Jr. lives. It is nuts.
Man, you know what I just realized? The patience that people have with these long-ass YouTube videos, specifically around these topics, and the fact that they're of that age, these are people who are used to the rhythms of daytime television.
Yeah.
They have the patience.
Yeah.
The patience to just sit.
Good point. Those were like 3 hours long, those morning shows. So
yeah, I think we built the way, man. Like, it's only one step from like this toothbrush will amaze you to Hillary eats children.
yeah, the QAnon community, they love Vincent Fusca. They like at rallies, they'll go and they'll take photographs with him.
Yeah.
They'll big old smiles. They love posting that on social media. Oh, I actually met Vincent Fusca.
He's so stoked.
Yeah.
And here it says that they think that Vincent means to conquer,
Yes.
and Fusca means the dark, which I'm
Yes.
going to go ahead and say I don't know what language you might be claiming that's in, but it isn't.
It's not.
Do you guys think that Vincent Fusca knows that he's JFK Jr.?
I don't know. He is become a little bit more press shy, so I don't think he's addressed this issue in depth.
Like, because there's got to be some like crazy Q supporter that's come up to him at a rally and be like, "Hey man, I know the truth. Like, get going. Like, I'm sorry about what they did to your dad. Like, don't worry. Like, we're gonna win, man. Darkness to light." You know, like, and then he's like, "Oh, okay." Like, how do you react to that? You know,
No, I think after a while he got confused. He seemed to just be a guy who wanted to be excited about Trump. He doesn't want any of this kind of nightmarish complexity that they're trying to tack onto it.
So yeah, I even found one instance of
This is-
someone dressed their child as Vincent Fusca for Halloween, and this child can't be older than like 2 or 3.
Child,
And they look like
child looks a little confused.
and they looks like a hobo costume.
yeah, he's like Charlie
It does.
Chaplin.
Yeah.
It's like a
straight
Charlie
up,
Chaplin.
That's the problem
costume.
with Fusca is like he kind of dresses like a well-dressed hobo. And I mean, no offense, and we're not making fun of the homeless, but in this case, this child actually looks like they've just been eating shit.
Yeah.
Like they're just the entire bottom of their visage is dark and brown.
Yeah,
It's not good.
Yeah, I wonder what the parents said. They were like, we're dressing you up this year as Vincent Fusca, who's really JFK Jr.,
Oh my
who was
God.
killed by Hillary Clinton.
To make matters even worse, there is a Twitter account on that really promotes this sort of idea. And it's called The Real R Anon. It has over 30,000 followers, and it also goes by the handle Vincent Fusca 2024. So this is someone on Twitter who pretends to be Vincent Fusca, who people think is JFK Jr.
Oh
if
my
you're
God.
following.
Oh boy.
But they actually think that's a Fusca account?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they actually. So
I mean, to be fair, they think we're a QAnon
right.
account. So
Yeah.
So this is what the bio of Vincent Fusca 2024, The Real R Anon says.
Oh boy.
Clowns, clowns, clowns. Time for a change, patriots. Stay tuned. Hashtag MAGA, hashtag QAnon, hashtag JFK,
Clowns, clowns, clowns.
hashtag where we go one.
Every
we
time
go
I try to
all.
go to sleep, I see them try to kill me in my mind.
The tweets from The Real R Anon, Vincent Fusca 2024, are very Q-like. So here's one from December the 2nd.
Hashtag Q is trying to help you understand why we carry on as if nothing is happening. Theme of the day, quote, when your enemy feels in control, ... It gets easier and easier. Back home to mommy, hashtag sheriff.
I mean,
Yeah, it's crazy.
wow.
And the thing is that
This reads like an adult baby cosplay.
Yeah, I can't imagine this is a real human behind this. I have to assume it is an artificial intelligence. I have to assume. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
So in fact, so a lot of QAnon believers on Twitter, they address the real Anon as if he is actually Vincent Fusca / JFK Jr.
Oh, yeah.
So on November 25th, which was JFK Jr.'s birthday, a bunch of people wished the real Anon a happy birthday.
That's awesome. I love that we live in this world.
Yeah. So here's one example from one Danielle Asher on November 25th. And Danielle says, "Yes, indeed. Happy birthday, John John. We love you more than you may realize. Stay safe and blessed, my dear. XOXOX." There were a ton of these tweets. This is just an example.
Honestly, I haven't seen an alliance between the right and Kennedy this strong since Arnold
Yes.
Schwarzenegger married one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are going to move on to the overview of the QAnon version of the JFK murder. JFK, the original John John. The QAnon community loves JFK. They see him as an ancestral champion to the ever-vigilant Donald, who fights every day against the entrenched, corrupt deep state. This is why they posit JFK was eliminated on that fateful November afternoon on Dealey Plaza, shot because he fought too hard, and somehow wasn't part of the elite they hate so much. Never mind that he comes from a family of wealthy Boston socialites. Never mind that he doesn't quite align with Donald politically. Who cares? We love him. In fact, here in the QAnon community, we celebrate JFK regularly, and our love for the former president is generously spurred on by Q. In a November 6, 2017 Q drop, Q asks,
How are JFK, Reagan, and Trump different from the rest? Why did JFK surround himself with family, much like POTUS?
The implication here is that JFK, Reagan, and Trump all challenged the CIA, all had their own independent wealth, and all were from families that were not in a political dynasty. And that JFK and Trump both surrounded themselves with family because those are the only people you can trust. Q actually said that Reagan and JFK were mistakes by the deep state in this October 31st, 2017 Q drop.
They never thought they were going to lose control of the presidency, not just D's, and thought they had control since making past mistakes. JFK, Reagan.
So they're implying that the mistakes was allowing them to accede to power, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They got elected despite the deep state's
Yeah.
best efforts.
Right. Q also implied that JFK was killed by the deep state in this December 14th, 2017 Q drop, in which he says,
The fix has always been in. No matter which party won the election, JFK killed, Reagan shot. It's so funny. It's so funny though, because he's like, he was killed. The other guy
was shot.
not
But
killed.
they were both shot, yeah. The QAnon version of the JFK assassination is always murky and vague, but it does always seem to involve George H.W. Bush, our favorite recently deceased daddy. For example, here's a tweet from Make USA Great 01 from November 21, 2017, less than a month after the first Q drop.
3 questions, same answer.
Why are you like a cigar-smoking 12-year-old in a baseball dugout?
3 questions. See if I can make it through it. Same answer. 1, who worked for the CIA in 1963? 2, who was in Dallas the day that JFK was killed? Number 3, who ran the CIA before he became president? Answer, George Bush Sr.
He didn't trust that you'd be smart enough. He was like, I gotta connect these dots myself.
Hashtag QAnon. Hashtag follow the white rabbit. Hashtag the storm. Hashtag MAGA.
Okay, you went full old Jewish lady towards the end there. This is basically saying, yes, the CIA ran it, and not only that, George Bush was involved, and then later he became president. Years later, again, everyone involved is very patient. Like, the deep state is incredibly patient. They always, they get the power that they just killed somebody for, like, 17 years later or some shit. I'm going to go ahead and say there's no human being on Earth that has that patience. Nobody. No one has patience.
I had that patience waiting for DayZ to come out on Xbox.
Yeah, and I have that patience with you trying to get me to play that game. So
Fair.
Here's a more recent tweet from December 5th that claims that Bush didn't give a straight answer about where he was when JFK was assassinated. I love the idea that, like, sir, where were you when JFK was assassinated? And he's just like, what day was that again? Can you give me the date?
Okay, so this guy tweets, Bush Sr. has always maintained that he couldn't remember where he was when JFK was assassinated. Guys sound like fucking Sebastian Gorka.
Yeah.
Stop that right now.
No, he's more British.
Yeah, JFK was assassinated even though he himself, meaning George Bush, called the FBI at 1:45 p.m. with a tip that a man with mental illness history did it. Parentheses, JFK was shot at 12:30 p.m.
I mean,
And then a thinking about it emoji.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say about this. I actually, I might have to go ahead and say that this is the most believable of all the claims
Yes.
so far. I do not think it's totally out of the question that the CIA or elements within the CIA who were actively working with like Cuban nationals at the time, there was
Yep.
all kinds of shit going on. The Russians were involved too.
Yes.
Like that was a turbulent period in history. I don't think it's completely crazy to see, hey, maybe the CIA either turned a blind eye or, I don't know.
Right, they allowed it to happen.
But the CIA does have a history of doing shit like this.
Yeah.
They've never murdered a president, but that might be the one time where they did and then just kind of went, wow, we'll not do this again because this was
this was pretty bad.
This was actually kind of bad, guys.
This was pretty bad. We didn't. A lot of kids got sent home from school.
Yeah.
This is,
We'll never do this again to anyone except this guy Jake Rocketansky, which we're gonna find in Garrett.
just two fucking little two little laser sight. Cause you see it on my forehead.
Yep.
Okay.
So Jake got access to this document. Usually he doesn't, but he hacked our system, and now he's put some stuff in, which again, surprising and awesome.
Yeah. Now, long before Q, many pre-QAnons or guys with access to libraries have
Microfiches.
have maintained that George H.W. Bush played a role in Kennedy's assassination, or at the very least, knew more than he admitted. Now that he's fucking dead with zero bedside confession, it was up to me to sort out the shit.
Yeah.
There are a couple Q drops in particular that caught my eye. The first one is from October 31st, Halloween of 2017. And it reads, "There are more good people than bad."
The next line makes this so much funnier even.
The wizards and
The wizards and warlocks.
the wizards and warlocks. Inside term. He notes that it's an inside term. That's an intel.
Yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and say that, like, I think Q's a guy just based on this because you're not going to mention witches?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Right.
There's
Wizards and warlocks.
No witches?
Man, fight the patriarchy.
Yeah.
The wizards and warlocks, inside term, will not allow another satanic evil piece of shit, POS, control our country. Realize Soros, Clintons, Obama, Putin, etc. are all controlled by three families. Parentheses. The fourth was removed post-Trump's victory. 11-3. Podesta indicted.
He wasn't?
11. They're saying Tony Podesta was indicted here.
Was he?
Yes. Oh, I don't know.
Nope.
I have no idea.
No. He wasn't.
But nobody's heard from Tony Podesta, and his company has folded. I will
Podesta was not indicted on 11-3. Please don't listen to Jake.
11-6. Huma indicted.
Also didn't happen.
Manafort was placed into Trump's camp, as well as others. The corruption that will come out is so serious that deals must be cut for people to walk away. Otherwise, 70% of elected politicians would be in jail. You are already seeing it begin. A deep cleaning is occurring, and the prevention and defense of pure evil is occurring on a daily basis. They never thought they were going to lose control of the presidency.
So grammatically here, he has just said that they are defending pure evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, awkward.
And they thought they had control since making past mistakes, JFK Reagan. Then he writes, Godspeed, Patriots.
No, he writes Goodspeed
Oh,
Patriots.
Goodspeed, Patriots. P.S. Soros is targeted.
He's like, P.S.
P.S.
I don't like Jews.
P.S. Don't worry. Don't worry. The Jews are in the
yeah,
crosshairs.
yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't touch on any Jews? Okay, Soros.
Throw in some red
Okay,
meat.
so Q's talking about these three families that control Soros, Clinton's, Obama, Putin, etc. First of all, etc.
Right.
Who else is there?
Right.
Well, I mean, he wants to give like space for whatever you think.
My uncle.
Yeah,
knew
yeah,
it.
yeah. Your family member you hate is always the fourth.
God damn it! I knew there was a reason. I'm gonna go out on a very, very long limb here and try to do my own decode, which is where he says removed after Trump's victory. I'm guessing are the Bushes. The Bush family obviously was notoriously powerful. Prescott Bush, HW's father, was a director and shareholder of companies that directly profited from financial backers of Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a 2004 Guardian article that indeed verified the link between Prescott Bush and the Nazis. The article headline is, How Bush's Grandfather Helped Hitler's Rise to Power. Not so subtle. Rumors of
Disclaimer, everything that Jake is reading now is probably real.
Rumors of a link between the U.S. First Family and the Nazi war machine have circulated for decades. Now the Guardian can reveal how repercussions of events that culminated in action under the Trading with the Enemy Act are still being felt by today's president. Okay, so this sort of ties in with Q's assertion that Nazi Germany had infiltrated American government as Prescott Bush went on to become a senator. And see our episode on Nazis, because we actually go into some of this a little bit. However, recently, with Jeb's campaign loudly farting itself into oblivion, and George W. sent out to graze in the same field as Jimmy Carter, who, by the way, I can't believe is still alive.
Well, a peanut a day keeps the doctors away.
You know who else I can't believe is still alive? Another revelation from the Bush funeral is Bob Dole. Yeah, I thought both of those guys were dead for sure. It seemed that the mighty power the Bush family once wielded was now gone. No one cared. W was like your uncle who got sent to the loony bin, finally started taking his meds and became lovable again. And HW was grabbing ass in his wheelchair and no one really gave a fuck, especially him.
Yeah, that was his specialty, a little pinch.
When I went to research online, I was immediately reminded that Donald Trump had declassified hundreds of docs on the JFK assassination, which seems like a lifetime ago, honestly, after all the shit that... Remember that?
I do remember. It was a big deal.
It was a big deal. It was before we knew. Now, this actually plays into a fairly interesting narrative if Trump indeed is working alongside JFK Jr. to bring justice to his father's murderers.
Yeah.
One document in particular caught my interest. It was published by USA Today shortly after the declass of the JFK documents. And the headline was, Russian-born oilman, a real international man of mystery, a vivid presence in the JFK files. So this article centers around a guy named George de Mohrenschildt, who was, quote, the uncle of President George W. Bush's prep school roommate, a friend of First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy's parents, an associate of Oswald, and a notorious womanizer and born vivant who was rejected by the Wartime Office of Strategic Services for alleged Nazi sympathies. In December 1963, he surfaced in Haiti to tell CIA operatives that he knew Oswald Kennedy's assassin. So because of his association with Oswald, de Mohrenschildt had to testify in front of the Warren Commission, and apparently was the longest testimony of any witness. And at some point afterwards, he wrote this letter to George H.W. Bush in the hopes that Bush might help him clear his name. And he writes, "You will excuse this handwritten letter. Maybe you'll be able to bring a solution to the hopeless situation I find myself in. My wife and I find ourselves surrounded by some vigilantes. Our phone bugged, and we were being followed everywhere. Either FBI is involved in this, or they do not want to accept my complaints. We are driven to insanity by this situation. I have been behaving like a damn fool ever since my daughter Nadia died from cystic fibrosis over 3 years ago.
Oh, God.
I tried to write, stupidly and unsuccessfully, about Lee H. Oswald and must have angered a lot of people. I do not know. But to punish an elderly man like myself and my highly nervous and sick wife is really too much. Could you do something to remove the net around us? This will be my last request for help, and I will not annoy you anymore. Good luck in your important job. Thank you so much."
This is amazing. This reads like a document you would find in a video game, you know, that
I
like
know,
tries to
right.
give you
I know.
background.
But this is
World
legit.
building.
I triple checked all my shit on this. This is the actual letter that he wrote. It is in the it's scanned into the government archives.
I love it.
So before Bush responded, the CIA went and searched their database for any mention of de Mohrenschildt. And it turns out that de Mohrenschildt had been on the CIA's radar for quite some time. Quote, after he returned from working in communist Yugoslavia. But his name came up again when a librarian who ran some sort of like book club in Dallas told the CIA that she remembered both he and Lee Harvey Oswald had attended a study group on the USSR, because the librarian who worked at wherever they held this like study group blew the whistle on him after the assassination.
Fucking narcs.
So J. Walton Moore, who was a CIA agent assigned to look into de Mohrenschildt, wrote, "He makes a good appearance. He reputedly has an eye for the ladies, and I understand his interest does not go unreciprocated. He leads a somewhat unconventional life, plays tennis at 5 o'clock in the morning. He is rather outspoken, has a keen interest in international affairs and in social justice. By local conservative standards," Moore wrote, "he would be considered a liberal." Lol, some things never change. Moore also spoke of a previous relationship de Mohrenschildt had with the Kennedys. Quote, "has been acquainted with First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy's father, John Bouvier, and mother, Mrs. Hugh Auchincloss, since Mrs. Kennedy was a girl. On November 9th, 1976, John had Mohrenschildt committed to a mental institution in Texas for 3 months and listed in a notarized affidavit 4 previous suicide attempts while he was in the Dallas area. In the affidavit, she stated that Mohrenschildt suffered from depression, heard voices, saw visions, and believed that the CIA and the Jewish mafia were persecuting him."
Yes.
So he kind of sounds like your
He sounds
classic
like
QAnon
Q.
believer. Yes. So you have this Russian oil man who is accused of being sympathetic to Nazi Germany, a family friend of both the Kennedys and the Bushes, Lee Harvey Oswald, and his Russian-born wife, Marina Oswald. I mean, it feels like a fucking walks into a bar joke, but sadly, in this case, the punchline is that de Mohrenschildt killed himself only a year after writing to George H.W. Bush for help. A few weeks after his suicide, Jean de Mohrenschildt gave the House Select Committee on Assassinations a print of a photograph showing Lee Harvey Oswald standing in his Dallas backyard, holding 2 newspapers and a rifle, and with a pistol on his hip. A photograph taken by Oswald's wife, Marina. On the back was written, and this is interesting, Julian, "To my friend George from Lee Oswald," and the date, 5/4/63, along with the words, "Copyright J.O.D.M." and a Russian phrase translated at "Hunter of Fascists, ha ha ha." This was the most direct link to Oswald that I could find between George H.W. Bush and the assassin.
It's interesting.
Who did work for the CIA. I mean, Oswald did work in Cuba. He was working for the CIA in Cuba as like I can't remember what his job was, whether he was an informant or an operative or something like that.
And then they tried to paint him as like a total lone wolf,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So there's definitely shady shit. I think there's a lot that that the CIA could kind of and illuminate us with. I think about that period of time in history. I don't know if I have any strong theories of like, oh, this for sure or that for sure, but
I mean, you can
a lot of fishy shit.
You can interpret it a couple different ways too, because like this guy, came under fire, like he felt like the FBI was still surveilling him, and it was almost like he's like reaching out to his handler, being like, "Hey, Bush, like, do you think that you can like get this off me?" But in the same sense, it also could be, oh, they knew each other because they had some family friends in common, and he knew Bush was in a place of power that he might be able to make this stop. So, I mean, you could really go either way based on the information that's there.
I love it. I like Jake segments because then I get confused and angry and frustrated, and I challenge you.
Makes you feel all the things.
But I learned, too. We learned something at the end of all those emotions.
And maybe Antifa was the friends we made along the way. All right. Today we have a very special guest. Matt Christman, co-host of the only socialist podcast currently available, Chapo Trap House. Matt, we love your work. Welcome to QAnon Anonymous.
Thank you guys for having me.
So, as threatened, we're having you on to clear up a few things regarding JFK, his son, the death of George H.W. Bush, and the deep state. I know just from listening to some of your other stuff that you're a fan of all of those things.
Yes, they all rule.
In the flat information world, they're also all equivalent. You were brought up by 2 history books and raised on a diet of Civil War gruel in a red state. How does it feel now? Are you comfortable as a coastal elite living in a derelict IPA factory in Bushwick?
That was always the dream, and it's finally here, so couldn't be happier about it.
And now it sounds like you've also somewhat fixed the tin can problem. That I guess that was your voice, right? Like you just had some surgery?
Yes, took care of it.
Amazing. But what is your background like, jokes aside? Like, where did you grow up, and how have your origins informed your politics?
I'm from Wisconsin, the town for making a murderer specifically.
Wow.
Right.
Not a lot of politics in my background, really. It just sort of over years found it to be the most interesting thing, I guess. I don't know. There's really no supervillain origin story that I can really pinpoint.
But you do have a specific interest in the Civil War, right? Was that your first rabbit hole?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was a Civil War nerd in junior high school, and it powered me kind of through my school years, and it did by kind of obsessing about it. It gave me a framework for politics where slavery I figured was pretty bad,
Uh-huh.
and so
Good.
it gave me a shorthand for when I was trying to evaluate current politics, and it seemed like anybody who had a lot of good things to say about the country and the insurgency that was initiated to defend slavery was probably pretty bad too.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, let's talk a bit about the older conspiracy surrounding the assassination of JFK. Like, what do you think happened there? Obviously, every time I look into it, I just get more confused. But do you think it's credible to connect the handsomest president's death to George H.W. Bush and the CIA?
Well, it's been said a number of times, but it's true that the one man in America who was of conscious age on the day of the Kennedy assassination who doesn't know where he was that day is George H.W. Bush. He famously was unable to recall what he did that day when asked later, but records indicate that he was, in fact, in Dallas.
Which is absolutely nuts because, like, we all, like, I remember where I was during 9/11. I'm sure Julian does, Matt. I'm sure you do as well. Like, during big major events like that, I mean, it's pretty frozen in time. So maybe his brain had already just started, like, turning into a crustacean at that point, and
I think he was. I think he remembers very well. It's just embarrassing to say that you were basically the footstool that the killer was standing on in the repository to make sure he could reach the window. So at the time, I mean, he was the head of the CIA, right?
No, not at that point. There is a theory that because he was still an oil man at that, he was a sort of a wildcatter. It was basically a hobby because he came from incredible patrician wealth, obviously.
Right.
But he wanted to strike out on his own, and he did that by going to the oil fields of Texas. So he was, publicly anyway, a private oil man. But there are people who claim that his company had connections to the CIA and was involved in things like logistics for the Bay of Pigs and whatnot. But I haven't looked into it closely enough to confirm or deny any of that.
Right. There's you'll see in the other part of the episode we did some digging and found that there's a Russian oil man of all nationalities that he and his family were connected to, who was a close associate of Oswald.
But
George de Mohrenschildt?
Yes, my friend.
Of course, you know him.
Of course. Well, because when I Google like H.W. Bush, like JFK assassination, like conspiracy, like the first thing that came up was the letter that he wrote Bush.
You can only reach Jake's level of knowledge by Googling and reading the first 5 results.
Yeah, I'm like 3. I'm like basically all the people that we make fun of. Like I'm like a 3 to 4 link in like type of guy. Like if I have to go to the second page, like forget about it.
You're also just a 3 to 4, just like on a snack scale.
Yeah, 3 to 4, just on a life scale. I have to go to my shitty day job.
So wait, what do you know about de Mohrenschildt?
I know that he kind of took Oswald under his wing when he lived in Dallas, and he was in that white Russian emigre circle, and he was an oil speculator, and that he has connections to intelligence circles, and that he blew his brains out in his garage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Bill O'Reilly was outside his door.
Oh,
Wait,
no shit.
Excuse me? Really?
Well, that's how O'Reilly puts it. I believe he was lying about that. He was on the phone with somebody else when they were trying to contact him for an investigation. But there was a reporter at his door when he blew his brains out.
Yeah, O'Reilly's like, listen, I've showed up to a lot of Jewish people's homes. Every time I walk in, their heads are blown off. I think I did it. But yeah, de Mohrenschildt, it's very confusing to me because looking over this stuff that Jake dug up, like, the guy is being accused by the American government of being a Nazi sympathizer, but then he's also clearly some sort of Marxist, and then Oswald was into Marxism, and then there's a joke photo that he took of Oswald where Oswald wrote on the back, "Hunter of Fascists." So it's very confusing to me, like what the political spectrum looked like among that group of weird people talking to each other.
Yeah, I think the most benign explanation for de Mohrenschildt is that he was basically a cad. that he was a kind of a quasi con artist. He was a guy who he tried marry. He was a big fan of marrying up,
Yeah.
and wasting his in-laws' money and things like that.
Yeah.
And he
I
was
know
much
all
more
about that.
bullshit than actual results when it came to his oil speculations. And
Right.
the theory, and Stephen King talks about this in his novel about the Kennedy assassination, is that he was basically just fucking with Oswald because he was this dorky, earnest ideologue nerd, and Morenschildt basically thought it was funny to wind him up.
So basically, you have like a Rick Wilson kind of guy who really doesn't have the upper hand, but is constantly owning somebody for fun.
Yeah, I mean, because I can imagine if I met Oswald that he would be the kind of person that if you were of a certain aristocratic, cruel sensibility, might be fun to mess with.
Yeah.
Because he was sort of the opposite of the Morenschildt. The Morenschildt doesn't seem to have any real ideology. He was a classic mid-century, like a George Sanders character or something. Just this guy flighting about, smoking the cigarette the Nazi way, or with a cigarette holder, and just being very fey and very ironic and not and having a bemused smirk at all of the ideologies and passions of the age.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. A guy like Oswald would be the opposite of him, and someone he would have every desire to fuck with. Or he was his CIA handler. Who knows?
So you're telling us that de Mohrenschildt triggered Oswald so bad that he killed JFK?
I mean, honestly, if they were having these conversations and de Mohrenschildt is messing with him and saying, so if you're really serious about this stuff, what are you going to do about it? Crazier things have happened.
Yeah, that's actually not impossible. And it's funny, too, because in his CIA file, it mentions 2 times that, like, what a ladies man and, like, schmoozer he is. Like,
fucked a lot.
It's almost as if the CIA agent writing up his thing is, like, kind of jealous of him. He's like, oh, he's very good with the ladies. And, like, it was not unreciprocated.
A virgin Lee Harvey Oswald and Chad George de Mohrenschildt situation.
Oh, beautiful.
Wow, that sheds like a whole new light on this. I think we just blew this shit wide open.
Wide open. Well, so, people on the right love to talk about the deep state. Of course, QAnon is obsessed with it. If you had to define a matte version of the deep state that's believable and has operated at least as long, like it needs to have some kind of control over a period of time, what would it be?
I'm honestly amazed that more lefties of the Oliver Stone generation aren't pissed at getting their shit stolen from QAnon, because all the shit they talk about with deep state, that's just repackaged military industrial complex stuff.
Yeah.
There used to be a time when if somebody started talking to you about Truman and the formation of the National Security Council, they were a left winger, but now it's probably some fucking psycho MAGA person.
Yeah.
Because what they're talking about is a real thing, which is that the bureaucratic institutions of the American state persist beyond the influence of transient political figures who are only in office for relatively short periods of time and don't have the ability to burrow through the layers of self-protecting bureaucracy that maintain that's why it's called this deeper structures of government.
Yeah.
And that means you're talking about the Pentagon, you're talking about the National Security Council, you're talking about all of the intelligence agencies that it is an umbrella for, and that they have an agenda and they have a geostrategic plan that is independent of the desires or campaign promises of any political figure, and that when those two things come into conflict, the resources and permanent bureaucratic fixtures of the deep state overcome the objections of the political class.
Yeah.
Like, you could argue that's been a part of government since the creation of modern states, but it's in the United States asserted itself most strongly post World War II with the creation of that national security state.
Yeah, and if I had to put a face to any of this, it would be Hoover, who, I think it was, 4 decades, multiple presidents, and, I mean, he certainly had an agenda of his own.
Yeah, and
yes, absolutely.
Speaking of the National Securities Act, when I was doing my research, I was following a Q link that takes you to like a coding for kids. It's like a coding for kids website that's like hosted on like the .gov or whatever. And it was like, can you believe that like these people use this as comms? And so I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm high. Like I've got a couple minutes to fuck around, and I decoded this whole thing. It said. Harry Truman started the National Securities Act in 1970, whenever it was. It was
it's
just
just
a
a
fucking
history
like,
fact.
yeah, it was just like a dumb fact.
To drink your Ovaltine?
Yes.
Yeah, you've put it all together. It's like epic bacon.
Yeah. I felt like such a rube.
So okay, like, what do you make of the QAnon phenomenon? We've seen you kind of make gentle fun of it online. Why has it gained traction, in your opinion, at this particular juncture of history?
Well, there are the broader cultural reasons, and then there's the narrower specific need that QAnon satisfies amongst the more conspiratorial Trump supporters. So in a broad sense, the hyper speed of information and the fracture of the media landscape has created a situation where everyone is piecing together their own versions of reality out of just a bunch of shattered pieces of porcelain. And that is going to lend itself towards conspiratorial thinking, just because there is no objective agreed upon reality that we can all work off of. And so that means we're going to just start improving, basically. And because we're in a time where the actions of the state seem so remarkably alienated from the input of either voters or their representatives, that the idea that there is some unseen hand maneuvering things is very persuasive. And because we don't have a language of class, we don't have a language of capital. It's and we do instead have a collection of film and televised narratives that have comprised the majority of our media diet. That disquiet and alienation and suspicion gets funneled into these stories, because they give us the same sensations that we get from the films and television we watch, and because we don't know how to talk about things like concentrated capital and its deforming effect on the systems of government that we produce, that we claim to be democratic. And specifically QAnon. So before QAnon was Pizzagate, which took over the fringier parts of the Trump base even before the election. But then Trump won, and that created a crisis, because Trump had been in these people's minds the antithesis of Pizzagate, the avenger, the guy who was going to clean the Augean stables of pedophiles and psychopaths and globalists. But then he won, and none of them went to jail. None of the pedophile rings were broken open. No children were led out of dank cages in pizza restaurant.
They just let into jank cages.
And that creates a crisis, if you really believe this, because how can Trump be the savior of America if he cannot also banish the deep state perverts who have done all these awful crimes? And so Q came into that moment, that it resolved that contradiction by saying, oh no, this is all happening just secretly. And if I can show you the codes that are Trump's winking to you, the elect, because of course that's always a big part of conspiracy thinking, is that it makes you get to flatter yourself that you see things other people don't.
Right.
I mean, it really is like, it's a Gnostic view of the world. And you've got this fake news media and then the globalists who are sort of the demiurge, preventing you from piercing the veil and seeing the real reality that Trump is trying to reveal to everyone. And that allows you to think, oh yes, Trump is still the savior. He is daddy, because this has all happened. These forces are marshaling behind closed doors. Either they've secretly already arrested people and given them trackers and stuff, which they seem to have gotten away from, to the new idea that, well, this is all going to culminate in one just day of reckoning when tanks roll down the street and the entire opposition is rolled up in one massive sweep. Either way, it allows you to think that Trump is the savior and the power, and also that there is a deep state of reptiles, pedophiles, and have those things both be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And like if it doesn't happen, it's only because like they got to him. Like it's the there's a built-in fail-safe for like when every time nothing happens.
Yeah. Well, the crafty deep state, they were able to kill George H.W. Bush and then have his funeral to postpone D5 because, as we all know, you can't arrest anyone on the day the funeral is happening. That's against the law.
I think they made him take a suicide. They were like, George, you've got to sacrifice yourself for the greater good.
We traded that you would kill yourself anytime we asked you to for being able to pinch any butt that comes near your wheelchair. And he was like, I will take that.
He's like, I'll take it.
I'll take it as long as I get to keep pinching Keister. So the other thing that strikes me is like Q, if you're thinking that there's all these invisible shadow hands controlling reality, which, let's be honest, for the average human being caught in this system, that is actually what's happening. There's a bunch of people, you can't really reach them. But what you want, like, it's okay to live in a scary world, but you just need a hero. And Q is like, he is the deep state to the deep state, like he is the guy on their side. And I think that really also satisfies people a lot, because otherwise they just have to deal with like the big faceless monolith that really doesn't care about them.
Yeah. It's like living in a Mission Impossible movie every fucking day of your life.
Yeah. Jacob Baccarat, I mean, what we're finding that, and this is what's so frustrating to me about Pizzagate specifically, the component of that is that the basic instinct, the idea behind Pizzagate, that elite, wealthy people ritually abuse children as a bonding mechanism and as a way to get blackmail and a way to initiate people into what it means to be a ruler. I think that's true. I think that's largely true.
Yeah, me too.
Jeffrey Epstein obviously is a hugely valuable lesson in the truth of that.
Yeah,
right.
And we know that they're doing that. And I think Jacob Baccarat, my friend who's on Twitter, after the Miami Herald article came out revealing how the current Secretary of Labor was the one who helped give Epstein his incredible sweetheart deal where he didn't even have to stay the whole day in jail, and it was a year in a county lockup, and gave preemptive immunity to all of his unnamed co-conspirators. And then the guy was rewarded with a Secretary of Labor job. Jacob Baccarat, he said that the real fantasy of Pizzagate isn't even really the basement layers or any of that. It's that any of these people will ever face justice.
Yeah, no,
which
that's
is the fantasy of Q.
Spot on.
That there's ever going to be a reckoning instead of one unified ruling class.
Yeah.
That is never going to really reveal the truth about what they do or call anyone accountable to anything that they're all mutually implicated in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, earlier in the episode, we do examine that Jake believes fully that Vincent Fusca is JFK Jr. and is still alive.
That's not true.
Is cute. He believes it fully. He'll put it on his grave, as we've always said. But who do you think, Matt, is behind the Q drops? I mean, someone is writing these, because if it was an automatically generated bot thing, it wouldn't have like 2 weeks of silence at crucial times. It would just kind of keep rolling.
I could be persuaded otherwise, but I thought that I think it was an NBC News article.
Yeah.
About Q that posited that it's those South African YouTube guys.
Yeah, Baruch the Scribe, pamphleted on. We do explore that in another episode. Yeah, that doesn't seem too unlikely to me. I've heard also Michael Flynn Jr., which I could 100% believe, at least was one of the Qs at some point, but who knows? I don't know if he knows how to use the chance.
Yeah.
He's stupid.
Yeah.
If he was Q, he would have accidentally posted a Q drop under his own name because he forgot. I mean, he is a dummy.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, we'll go with the weird nerds.
His Twitter bio is rife with emojis and stars and flags. That's usually a good indicator. That's
yes. So, Matt, we recently saw D5 come and go. The supposed day where mass arrests, or at the very least indictments, would befall the deep state, specifically the Clintons, but also Obama, the Bushes, George Soros, and Robert Mueller, among others. This would supposedly kick off what QAnon believers call the storm. Obviously, nothing happened, and they got dunked on relentlessly on Twitter. And actually, this has happened for the last, I don't know how long, basically periodically.
Year and some change.
They just do this once in a while. So now that they're saying, Bush Sr.'s funeral was used to delay the whole thing, like you mentioned, and that D13 might be the real D, which is my birthday, so I'm kind of excited about that. But I also am wondering what D is going to be the right D, in your opinion.
D's nuts.
Wow. Okay.
I have to say that I got so fucking frustrated with D5 because in the lead up to it, I went on Twitter and I said, and I used all the hashtags, and I know that these people obsessively click on the hashtag, so I knew they would see it.
Of course.
I said, anybody who really believes this, bet me money. Put money on the table that something will happen on D5, because I would bet any amount of money you want to put on. I would do it any way you want to do it to assure that I wouldn't welsh, because that's free money. That's free money from the government, because there's zero way anything was going to happen, and I knew that 100%. And of course, none of these idiots wanted to bet, because they really are full of shit. At the end of the day, they're just having fun. I mean, I'm sure you guys have talked about it when they get pressed during those interviews, when they're all waving their cutout Q signs in front of a Trump rally. They end up sort of falling back on it's fun. It's an enjoyable treasure hunt.
Yeah, it's like
And they don't really think that anything is going to happen.
Yeah,
because they couldn't get any of these motherfuckers to actually commit to any money thing. And then a number of them were insisting that after D5 came and went, no, it was never about mass arrests. Q never said that. Actually, it was about a congressional committee hearing on the Clinton Foundation.
Yes.
Got postponed because of the funeral, and that was the original D5. Or also, someone pointed out to me that that somebody involved in one of the Panama Papers money laundering banks was arrested or indicted or something, and that bank, of course, is connected to the Clinton Foundation, which, yeah, I'm sure it was fucking gigantic nonprofit. I'm sure it's connected to a shit ton of banks. And for them, that was all it took. But I got one guy finally, and I got this one guy who was hammering him, bet me, and he wouldn't do it. He would not. He wouldn't even. He was just. And these guys it's so frustrating because they're just so. They can't even parse English language half the time. It's amazing that they think that they've broken the code of the universe when a simple English sentence will just go over their heads and they won't understand it. Finally got a guy. He wouldn't bet money because he's a coward. I finally got a guy to say, if at the end of 2019 there haven't been significant arrests, he would delete his Twitter account, and I would have to delete mine if there are. It wasn't really an equal bet because he has like 3,000 followers and a negative fucking ratio of followers to followed. But I still took it because I just wanted something on the thing. But he also insisted to me he wouldn't bet on it, of course, but he made a hunch that by the end of February I would have to delete my account. So I guess they're all committing now, the ones I've seen, saying, well, it's got to be 2019 because some statute goes into effect that is part of the buildup to the arrests, and they can't do anything until this is in force. So they can't strike until the new year. So
that's a really broad. You've accepted a bet based on an entire year. You're gonna have to.
That's all I do. I want one of these motherfuckers to just put something down. I have to give them anything they want in terms of the parameters of the bet, because otherwise they won't do it.
They won't do it.
And by February, I'm going to start shitting in his mouth every day on March 1st. So don't have to wait till the end of 2019.
So how are you going to protect Hillary for an entire year from the truth, Matt? Don't you think that's going to be exhausting?
Ooh, I am worried. It's gonna be tough.
But dude, like you nailed it. I mean, that's all these guys are willing to bet, and you deleting your account in shame is the most that they could hope for. I mean, that's all they care about. They don't care about money or any of this. They want like people to be owned and like to like feel shame and like skulk away from their social media presence. Like that you did get the best thing that you could get.
He actually did say at one point, my Twitter account's more valuable than any money. So, it really matters.
Oh my God!
I'm betting. I'm not a coward. I'm betting what really counts.
Yeah, me and my 3,000
100%
followers.
positive that even if he's still online by the end of 2019, he will not delete.
Well, he won't even be called QAnon by that point. He'll have switched his name to some new fucking insane thing, and he'll pretend you don't exist.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna make fucking alts though. I'm gonna harass that person into oblivion until they were wrong and delete their account.
Now you're confirming what the brocialists do, which is the praxis of pain and just inflicting it.
On this guy, absolutely. I will do all the pain I can get my hands on.
So what do you think the outcome of the broader QAnon conspiracy and social movement is going to be? Are we looking at a bang? And I don't mean that in terms of Hillary Clinton getting arrested. I mean that in terms of like some dude walking into a pizza place with a gun, or what do you think? What do you think this is all kind of spiraling around the drain towards?
See, that's the interesting question, because we know that some of these guys get activated. Obviously, first you had the Pizzagate gun guy.
Yep.
Then, by the way, that's the only honorable believer in Pizzagate was that guy.
Hell yeah.
These guys honestly thought that there's a basement full of children being abused in a building that they knew the address of.
Yep.
And they just posted about it. That's cowardice. That is absolute cowardice. That was the only guy who took it seriously. So props to him. And then there was a dude who jackknifed his car in front of the Hoover Dam.
Oh yeah, I remember that guy.
Release the report.
Yeah.
So we know that they could be activated.
Yeah.
But most of them are just posting boomers. So I think that they're probably just going to get into something else. XFL will debut and they'll do that deal where nobody's allowed to kneel, and they'll just get really into that.
Yeah, I was telling Jake, because sometimes people tend to take this thing seriously, but I really think 90 to 95% of these people, for them, Q is just a thing they do between church and bridge.
Absolutely.
That's it. And then the rest of the 10 are a mix of, these kind of like hyper poisoned nerds and legitimately mentally ill people.
Yeah, it's almost
people
like
who are trying to figure out their own way to make money off of it, of course.
Oh, of course. Yes,
oh yeah, the grifters.
Sorry, forgot them.
Yeah, we do. We talk about that in the
which we are not part of. We're not
obviously.
We're not living. We don't have a Patreon, for example, that you should go to and pay some money. We're not making any money off the QAnon world in any way, direct or indirect. So we're fans of Chapo, obviously, over here at QAnon Anonymous. What's cooking in Chapo land? Anything special happening in the near future, Matt?
We're gonna do more Twitch content, more not gaming, but events. Basically, we're gonna be doing maybe tabletop gaming or the Pickle Rick card game. I want to play that.
Beautiful.
Oh, dude, that's
Pickle
awesome.
Rick. I want to be Pickle Rick.
Will you be allowed to consume beer?
Well, just beer. Hard liquor is off the table, literally.
You heard it here. Nobody's going to be feeding Ambien to Matt next time.
No.
So, and what about like you personally? I know Felix just released his 800-hour MMA documentary.
Yeah, that was impressive.
It's amazing. He got to work with Jordan Peterson on that. And you, what personal projects are you up to?
I don't have anything right now. I mean, the thing he was doing looked like a lot of work. No, thank you. I actually do have a few projects, but it's that thing where they're still in the early stages of being proffered and shaped out, so I can't really talk about them.
No problem at all. We'll keep that a mystery then. Matt's Twitter is @Cushbomb. And you can find Chapo Trap House everywhere podcasts are distributed. They also have a Patreon. In fact, at this point, I think you guys have founding shares of Patreon. Is that right, Matt?
We not yet. We'll get them.
Somebody cut them in. Isn't it Jack? Are they all called Jack? I think it's another Jack.
Yeah, anybody who's Jack owns some kind of tech something.
It's actually, there's just one Jack, and they're all broken off of the hive. It's a mind being.
Well, thank you so much for making the time and coming on the podcast. Take care, Matt, and we will speak to you soon.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another week of QAnon Anonymous. We have a mailbag segment. You can send any and all questions to QAnonAnonymous@gmail.com. We will answer them on the podcast without doxing you. Also, you can contact us through the Discord if you want to send the questions that way as well. Our Twitter is @QAnon Anonymous. We don't run any advertising on our podcast. We are supported by our listeners. Our Patreon is patreon.com/QAnon Anonymous. If you pay $5 a month, you'll get access to our premium episodes. We're currently recording 2 a month, and if we get to 500 on Patreon, we'll be recording 4 a month. So force Jake to become that good at doing stuff.
Yeah.
He wants it. He's ready. He's the hungry young man.
And in honor of the Kennedys, I'm going to thank our current supporters in the voice of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, God.
Thanks to our current supporters.
Oh, my
Aaron T,
God.
Andrew F, Bully Whiff, Carl Z, Carson P, Chris M, Danny C, Drew M, Eric O, Harry D, Henry L, Gerald L, Gerald M, John F, John S, Jonathan S, Josh R, Josh W,
Hey,
Josiah D,
all you Jewish people out there, stop signing up.
Kaya B, Kelsey, Linda R, Luke B, Samuel C, Sierra H, Tim G, VLK, the Shitpost Podcast, and Dana, Danny, and Dominic.
Guys, if your name does not sound like it could come from the Old Testament, please sign up for our Patreon so you can balance this stuff out, okay? I'm surprised we don't have a Jebediah right now. If you can't afford to support us financially, you can always help by telling friends about us, which some of you have been doing, which is awesome. Like, I see Twitter stuff. There was somebody who was like, I've been drinking wine and listening to this fancy podcast. My friend showed it to me, and she tagged her friend. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Friend.
Hell yeah, friends.
Do it. Everyone's a friend. Friend it up. So yeah, do that. Message boards, whatever. Go to iTunes. Give us 5-star rating. It would be the same amount of fingers we will be severing if you refuse to do this for us. You have 1 week. Yeah. Jake, thank you for cutting a hole in your shirt over each of your nipples so I can spray them with essential oils and keep them at attention.
You're welcome.
Travis, the curl in your hair makes unfurl my derriere.
Okay, well, that while we're recording, Jordan. Come on.
Thank you. Any last words before we go, fellas? That was quite an episode, right? That Matt interview, right? Can't believe we got that guy, huh?
It was
Amazing.
Pretty good.
A legend.
We're not recording this before we've done the interview, so that we don't know what's in the interview.
Fusca 2024.
Yes,
Yeah.
Fusca 2024.
I just find it amazing that Matt came out as pro QAnon in that interview. It surprised us all. So you can write to him and let him know that that's awesome. Listener, until next week.
May the deep dish bless you and keep you.
It's not